Several UN schools in Gaza sheltering Palestinians have been attacked.
The precise location and coordinates of the school were conveyed on 17 occasions to the Israeli military.
Israel insists it's responding to outgoing Hamas rocket launches near UN buildings. Even the UN's usually mild-mannered top diplomat seems to have lost patience with Israel.
All available evidence points to Israeli artillery as the cause. Nothing is more shameful than attacking sleeping children.
As Gaza burns, each day a different UN agency all but accuses Israel of everything from war crimes to lying. It's the latest chapter in a chilly, decades-long relationship that is tested every time Israel feels it must defend itself.
It is not a word that is casually nor easily tossed about by Jews around the world. Holocaust. But it is one being used more often by many as issues in the Middle East set the world on fire with opinions as to who is getting it right, who is defending themselves, and who the aggressor is. And today another ceasefire is started and stopped almost in minutes. Missiles are flying again, hostages being taken, and the world still seems to be tilting toward Israel as the aggressor. Let's welcome into MidPoint from Congregation Solel in Chicago, Illinois. He is one of the country's youngest rabbis in the Reform movement. Rabbi Evan Moffic joins us today. Rabbi, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Rabbi, I would like to start out by letting you hear something that happened here yesterday on MidPoint. We had a rabbi by the name of Yisrael Weiss out of New York City. We had him on. He is part of the Zionist movement, if you will. He had some very, very inflammatory things to say in what he believes is a schism. He believes that Israel is doing it wrong and Israel is the one at fault. And he said that even Jews around the world would believe that Israel is the one at fault here. I want you to hear this, please, because I'd like you to respond to this and give us another side of it. Here's the sound.
Absolutely.
It's against our Torah to create a state. It's against our Torah to oppress the people and steal their lands. We have no right to it. Their claim to the occupation is in the name of the Torah, in the name of Judaism. Yet the Jewish law is clear and explicit that we are not to have a state. We are not to oppress the people. They are masquerading in our religion in the Star of David in the name Israel, and we are hurting.
I heard you sigh as I was telling you a little bit about what the soundbite would include, because I have a feeling that you have heard this before. However, this is from another rabbi who says that it is Israel who is getting it wrong. Would you please respond to this?
I think it's just outrageous. I mean, Israel has been the country that has sought peace as much as possible. I mean, what would any country do when another group is shooting rockets over their country? And the thing he talks about, the occupation, Gaza is not occupied. Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2006, so blaming the occupation doesn't work at all in this context. I think, you know, there are different standards for becoming a rabbi, and somebody who doesn't believe, you know, in the sovereignty of the state of Israel is not someone that I think is really representing the Jewish people.
Why is it then that he would say, and you need to explain this again, and if you would please, for people who don't understand, why he would say that it is against the Torah, which is the Bible for the Jewish faith?
Well, I think he is right to say that the Torah believes strongly in not oppressing others. You know, the Torah, God says to Abraham, "You shall be a blessing to the nations of the world." Part of the Jewish mission is to be a light unto the nations and to seek peace. But the Torah is also realistic about preservation. And when Abraham needed to find land to live on, he negotiated, he worked, and there was conflict. So the Torah isn't a pacifist utopian document. The Torah is realistic, but the Torah also says peace will come. The Torah is full of hope, but it's not something that tells us that war is never going to happen.
You obviously are a man of peace as a rabbi. You hear a fellow rabbi right now who is basically excoriating his own people, and he is saying, and he told us on the show on Thursday, that most Jews around the world are against what Israel is doing at this moment to Hamas and in the Gaza Strip. And even as a man of peace, how angry does this make you to hear this?
Oh, it makes me furious. Not only, it's just not true. I mean, I have never seen, especially after, sadly, the kidnapping of the eventual murder of the 3 students. I'm a relatively young rabbi. I had never seen the Jewish community so unified. You know, we're a small people, but, you know, there's a classic joke. When you have 2 Jews, you have at least 3 opinions. So we disagree on things, and that's wonderful. But in the wake of terror, we have to find that there's unity. And this guy is really just trying to disrupt the unity that we feel. So not only is he wrong, I think it's dangerous and destructive.
Let's talk about dangerous and destructive. Those are possibly words that the United Nations would use against Israel, as a matter of fact, with what is happening right now. The UN has come out against Israel. And I think what's happening here is the world sees Israel as being in control of the situation right now. And there are those who believe that Israel could at least try to do something else or something further without hurting and killing as many civilians as they are. Why then, and does this not, at least it's got to get under your skin a little bit, because you do hear people say this, and Israel says this is the only way for us to protect themselves. There's a real dichotomy there.
I think you're right. I think it is. I mean, Israel agreed to a ceasefire, and then within hours, Hamas broke it. So I think Israel is really struggling to find a way to create a quiet situation on its border. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu has said, we'll take quiet for quiet. So if Hamas would agree to stop bombing Israel, there would be quiet on the border. So I don't think really the onus right now is on Israel. I think the onus is on Hamas. And anyone who looks at this situation rationally and realistically sees that. You know, what it reminded me earlier today of is, in the Bible you have the story of Pharaoh and the Israelites escaping from Egypt. And Pharaoh kept acting against his own interests. It was self-destructive. You know, the people said, let the Israelites go free. And Pharaoh said, no, we want to oppress them more. So I think most Palestinians want peace. But the Hamas leadership says, no, we want to hurt ourselves even more. I think that's what, hatred can be very irrational.
Here is a quote from Hamas spokesman Fawzi Barhoum in Gaza City today. And this was, as you noted, there was a 72-hour truce that was started. The truce lasted, I believe, about an hour and a half before there was some sort of deadly weapon fire, some sort of incident that happened, which apparently resulted in both Israeli soldier deaths, Palestinian deaths, and perhaps the kidnapping of an Israeli soldier. Here is Barhoum. The Israeli enemy is the one that breached the truce when Israel's special forces entered the eastern side of Rafah. The Palestinian resistance clashed with them, and this was our right to defend ourselves, according to our understanding with what's between sides, that it is important of the resistance to defending our people and themselves in the case of any renewed Israeli incursions. Why should the world not believe them? Rabbi?
Yes, I don't know what the Palestinians, I don't know what they're resisting. Israel doesn't occupy Gaza. You know, Israel was trying to respond to rockets shot into its country. So I think that Hamas has a clear strategy of trying to kidnap Israelis, trying to provoke Israel, and then blaming Israel for all civilian deaths. Now, every civilian death is a tragedy. There's no, and I think nobody cares more about civilians in Gaza than Israel. It's Hamas that's putting civilians in Israel's way, and it's sad that the people who are supposed to be defending Palestinians simply just lie about it and actually act not in the best interest of their own people.
I have about 90 seconds left here. There have been incidents of anti-Semitism around the world. There have been protests against Israel and people of the Jewish faith. We've seen it even here in the United States now. I used the word Holocaust as we started this segment right now.
Yes.
Is there an honest and real fear from the Jewish people themselves that we are seeing the resurgence, or we are seeing a second Holocaust beginning here, or is that hyperbole?
I think the word Holocaust may be a hyperbole. You know, the great blessing of the last 50 years is that Israel is a strong sovereign state. But I am deeply concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism. I think it's horrific. In Europe, the place where Jews were murdered 65 years ago, its leaders are criticizing Israel for defending itself. I mean, that's hypocrisy, it's hatred. So I'm worried about it. I thank God for the United States that we're a place of freedom, but I am worried about the rise of anti-Semitism. And it's fine for people to disagree with the policies of the state of Israel, but oftentimes opposition to Israel turns into hatred of Jews, and that's what I'm worried about.
20 seconds. Any reaction from your local temple?
Oh,
I think we may have lost him. Rabbi, still there?
we had a group of Palestinian students at our synagogue, and they want peace. But it's Hamas. Once Hamas steps down, we have a chance for peace. That's what my congregants think, that's what I think, and that's what I pray for.
Rabbi, I want to thank you for answering some questions here and also for responding to what we heard yesterday right here on MidPoint as well. We thank you for your time, and I hope we get a chance to speak again under better circumstances.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
We finally had a chance to hear what the rabbi said from yesterday and get a response from it today. I heartily suggest you go to newsmaxtv.com, look at the interview that we did on Thursday, hear more from that rabbi, hear some of the responses here, put them together, and create your own opinions. Later on this hour, Friday means more than just an entree to the weekend. It means the political punching bag and a reason to laugh. We need it here in the world right now. It's coming up right here on MidPoint.